have Republicans who are, aggressively trying to bring back trickle-down economics. And, the theory, of course, of trickle-down economics is that, as Ronald Reagan laid this out, is that if we just give rich people a lot more extra money, give them massive tax cuts, give them huge subsidies. We subsidize the fossil fuel industry to the tune of $600 billion a year. We subsidize virtually all of your major industries, the banking industry, the airline industry, et cetera. Just give them lots of subsidies. And what they'll do with all that money, that free money that they get, is they will build factories and they will hire people like you and me to work in them. That's what Reagan told us. That was the whole trickle-down theory. And it turns out it was a complete lie. We've got 43 years to look back on it and see that what it has done is it has taken us from 60% of us being in the middle class to only 47% of us in the middle class now, which is creating a lot of pissed off white people who are voting for Donald Trump right now. This is neoliberalism on steroids. And there was a $51 trillion transfer of wealth from average working people into the money bins of the top 1%. $51 trillion over a 43-year period. Now, a lot of people think that trickle-down was a brand new thing that Ronald Reagan came up with. Well, actually, it wasn't. In the 1880s, the first Democratic president to call out Republicans for basically sucking up to rich people. Basically, the GOP became the party of rich people in the early 1880s. This was after the Tilden Hayes election of 1876 that ended Reconstruction. And that was the end. I mean, the Republican Party up until 1876 had been the party of, equal rights and civil rights and black people voting and all that kind of stuff. That all went away over a 4-year period between 1876 and 1880. By 1880, the GOP was just the party of rich people. And they've been that ever since. So in 1888, Democratic President Grover Cleveland, in his State of the Union address, said, and I quote, "As we view the achievements of aggregated capital, we discover the existence of trusts, combinations, and monopolies, while the citizen is struggling far in the rear or is trampled to death beneath an iron heel. Corporations, which should be the carefully restrained creatures of the law and the servants of the people, are fast becoming the people's masters." But that wasn't the first time that there was a tax put on wealthy people. The first one was in 1839, and it was put on by a congressman. The guy who shepherded it through Congress was Congressman Abraham Lincoln. And in 1839, March 2nd, 1839, he wrote to his friend William Wade, he said, "I believe this tax can be sustained because it doesn't increase the tax upon the many poor, but only upon the wealthy few." This was basically a luxury tax. He said, "By taxing luxuries and land, as is well known, that belong not to the poor, but to the wealthy citizen. On the other hand," Lincoln wrote, "the wealthy cannot justly complain because the change is equitable within itself and also a sine qua non to the compliance of the Constitution. If, however, the wealthy should, regardless of the justness of the complaint, as men often are when interest is involved in the question, complain of the change, it is still to be remembered that they are not sufficiently numerous to carry the elections." In other words, we're going to tax the rich people because they can't vote us out of office. Well, a lot has changed since 1839. And of course, Lincoln also put into place the first actual income tax in 1861 to finance the Civil War. But a lot has changed since then. The Supreme Court has said that billionaires can legally bribe politicians. 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court ruled that in multiple cases, Buckley, Bellotti, and Citizens United. And, here we are. So anyhow, back then, that was the 1880s. In the 1880s, and then in the 1920s, Warren Harding, who ran for president as a Republican in 1920 and won, brought up this horse and sparrow theory. Back then, everybody drove horses, rode horses, and, the streets of America were filled with horse manure. And you'd frequently see little birds, little sparrows pecking, grain out of that horse manure because, horses' digestive systems are not all that efficient. And so they called it the horse and sparrow theory, that if you just give horses a lot of extra oats, those oats will pass through undigested and the sparrows will be able to eat a lot of oats, pecking them out of the horse poop on the ground. And the theory was you give a lot of money to really rich people and they will spend it in ways that will actually create demand, and that will put working class people back to work. Well, that kind of came to an end with the Republican Great Depression in 1929, and so here we are. But now they're at it again in Kansas. They're trying to push through tax cuts. In Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, Republicans are trying to push through. In those three states, they've got Democratic governors, which are stopping it. In Mississippi, Republican Governor Tate Reeves has radically cut taxes, which, of course, is going to be cutting education and physical infrastructure. Georgia cut that state taxes by $1 billion. North Carolina from 5.5 down to 3.9% income tax. Iowa trying to transition to a flat tax, so even the poorest workers will pay the exact same amount of tax as the billionaires in Iowa. I mean, this is just crazy. But trickle-down is making a reappearance. And the Republicans are like all down with it. They're loving it. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities noted from 2021 to 2023, quote, 26 states cut their personal income tax rates and or corporate income tax rates, 13 of them multiple times. And then they talk about how, what kind of damage this is doing to education in those states, to infrastructure in those states, to the ability of those states to even provide health care to people. So thankfully, the Joe Biden is the first American president since Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter, actually, in the last 2 years of his presidency, embraced neoliberalism. He deregulated the trucking and airline industries. But the early part of his presidency, he was not a fan of neoliberalism. So Joe Biden is the first president to say no to neoliberalism since then, Democratic or Republican. And I think that's a BFD. That's a big deal. And, Biden just came out last week and he said, we've gone from trickle-down economics to the point where we're in a situation where we build from the middle class out and the bottom up. And that way the wealthy still do very well. No one wealthy is hurting at all. We're in good shape. So we have to keep it going that way, end quote. So just wanted to flag this for you. If you live in a red state, expect trickle-down coming to your town soon.